Hello athletes, Travis here. Today we are going to be talking about how to look at your progress in steady state training and how to approach your day-to-day steady state training in terms of your goal setting to ensure that you are achieving consistent, reliable progress and that you are not defeating yourself by setting unreasonable expectations and skewing what your goals are going into each of those steady state workouts, all right? And we're gonna pull up some visual aids today. So we have the whiteboard, and so what we are gonna talk about is understanding how progress on steady state works, all right? So we have our graph here, all right? I flipped it so that faster is up because we like to think about going up is better. And then we have a breakdown here, all right? And so you'll notice here on this x-axis that these are seasons, all right? They're not days, they're not weeks, they're not months, they're seasons, all right? Steady state, improvement in steady state comes over a long period of time, all right? It is not an immediate thing. It's not like in a month your steady state's gonna suddenly come down a lot, with the exception of if you are a newer athlete in the sport, then certainly all improvements are gonna come quicker just because you're learning so much. But if you've been in the sport for a year or two or so, then you can expect your progress, if done properly, and it's real progress that is going to carry through far into the future, that progress is gonna come slow, all right? And a big thing I wanna warn people about too, and I was just talking to one of my athletes today about this, is that it is very easy to get sudden improvements in your rowing at the expense of long-term progress, all right? So at any time, you can kind of throw a lot of high intensity or a large amount of volume at an athlete and see a big improvement on a relatively short period of time. But if you throw a sudden load on an athlete, while you will get that kind of short-term benefit in the month, 2 months time frame, that after that you're going to start to pay the piper, as it were, and your progress starts going to probably plateau and maybe even decline, all right? Whereas if you are patient about your progress and very systematic about your training, then your progress will be slow, but it will also be steady and consistent, all right, with very few kind of plateaus along the way, all right? And that's what I aim for with my training. I'm always trying to look towards the long term. There's very few instances where I would support an athlete trying to get a quick short-term gain, a burst of speed, all right? And understanding that long progress, because steady state is the foundation of any aerobic athlete's long-term performance, and you need to understand that it's going to take foundation building over the course of a very long period of time, seasons, years, in order to fully reap the reward and fully realize your potential as an athlete. So that being said, we also, as human beings, we tend to focus on the now and on the present. We don't want to be kind of lost too far in the future. And we also want to make sure that the present is giving us enough reinforcement that we can continue kind of pushing with that training so that we can see those long-term benefits. Because ultimately, if you stop, then it doesn't matter what you were doing before. You've lost any of those benefits, all right? And what I see athletes do, especially with UT2 steady states, all right? Because UT2 steady state is a controlled effort aerobic training zone, all right? So you are a fairly significant distance away from your peak performance potential when you're doing steady state. If I sit down and I do steady state for an hour at UT2, all right, I'm going far slower than I could go at full effort, all right, trying to get as many meters as I can over that 60 minutes, all right? And so at any time, you can go faster on steady state. You should be able to go faster on steady state at any time, but it takes discipline and understanding of that training zone and understanding of kind of how you feel and how you respond to those training sessions to ensure that you're not constantly kind of getting speed out of effort, that you're getting speed out of a positive training adaptation. All right, and we're going to talk about kind of tracking that. And so with my athletes, I talk to them a lot just in terms of how we're tracking our UT2 steady state, and I'm going to make a separate video to kind of follow up on this where we talk about how to set up and execute a UT2 steady state to achieve the best benefit with this talk in mind, all right? But for today, we're going to talk about just kind of measuring it, measuring your average for your steady state on every different training session and recording that and how that should track and how we want to understand that so that we're not kind of constantly pushing faster than we should be pushing, all right? So when I have an athlete recording their UT2, what I'll have them do is I'll have a distinct warm-up period, all right? And I'll say that may be 10, 15, maybe 20 minutes for most athletes. And then I'll have them reset the monitor, and then the rest of that volume is their main session, all right? So if I have an athlete doing a 60-minute UT2 steady state, we'll always call the first 15, 10, 20 minutes or so their warm-up. They'll reset that monitor, and then the time that they send me, their average split, is gonna be the time after that warm-up. So it's gonna be anywhere from 40 to 50 minutes of actual rowing time that we're going to record, all right? And I split that up because I don't want any pressure on the athlete to go faster on their warm-up than they should to get a better final average, right? The warm-up is the warm-up, all right? You're still getting your body kind of that aerobic benefit so long as you're not warming up and stopping and stretching and getting water or whatnot and then coming back to it. But I consider warm-up more as a period within a whole, not as a separate activity followed by a main activity, all right? And so 60 minutes of rowing, 10 minutes of warming up, reset the monitor without stopping, continue. Your average split at the end of that 50 minutes is going to be your mark for your training log for that session, all right? And so these marks are going to look something like this. All right, hopefully we can see that. All right, your steady state progress is a scatter plot. It is not a straight line, all right? And so you can look at that scatter plot and you can extrapolate improvement in your aerobic fitness over time. So if I take the average of that, of those points, I have this line that is showing me that my average steady state performance is improving, all right? And now this is kind of the key part of this video here, is that athletes, they want to be constantly getting faster, all right? And they don't want to kind of set a mark and then be slower than that mark in the future. They see that as failure, but that is totally not the case with steady states, all right? And so if you have an athlete that's constantly focused on trying to get faster, all right, on their UT2 session, even their UT1 sessions, all right, mentally what they'll tend to do is they'll be aware of this average, all right? And then anytime they're kind of bouncing below, what they're doing is they're trying to kind of reset what the slope of the line is, ignoring all of this, all right? And we don't want that. Or they'll also say, well, I'm normally a 201 here early on. And so on days where I'm a 202 down here averaging, that's a bad day, all right? They don't feel good about it. You know, they're far, and this is exaggeration, that there should be outlier points kind of even, bigger, because your steady state has a little bit more variability in terms of your performance. But what's happening is that they're going to see kind of their individual day below that line, and they're gonna be like, oh, that was a bad session, all right? And what they're gonna do mentally is they're gonna have this awareness of what they should normally be, and they're constantly going to be striving to get their session on the top end of this line, all right? And so these dots are assuming consistent effort, all right? Consistent effort over time, all right? And if you have consistent effort over time and you're logging more and more volume, then your ability, all right, the training adaptation will create more speed, all right, and more fitness, all right? And so consistent ability, all right, is going to produce more speed over time. But it's not gonna produce more speed on a day-to-day basis, all right? So this dot here at this 202 may be the exact same effort as this dot up here, a day or two before. That's a 158. That's 4 seconds different, all right? Now, it's because there's a lot of other things that influence what your speed is on a day-to-day basis, all right? But it's important for us, especially this is why we want to keep a training log, and we want to be able to zoom out. We want to be able to collect these data points so that we can throw it into a graph like this, and we're going to get this scatter plot of data points, but then we can see the average is moving in a positive direction. So even though we're having all these days that are slower than our average, that's not bad. That is normal, all right? That's how the body trains, all right? So the body doesn't train in this straight line, all right? This line is the average. This line isn't the data points, all right? And if you are an athlete and every time you're sitting on the erg, you're thinking, this is the only time I had a good session, one, you're gonna kill your own motivation, and you're also gonna consistently be pushing yourself to row at a higher effort than normal, or then higher effort than what you should be for UT2. And then you're getting into that gray zone training. And I made an entire video about gray zone training and why we want to avoid it. But essentially what that means is that you're pushing harder, all right, you're going a little faster, but you're not pushing hard enough to get to the next energy zone. For this athlete, that might be a 154. All right, so if you're somewhere between your ideal here, all right, starting out at a 201, eventually getting to a 159 a year later, all right, if you're constantly kind of, training here, all right, and you're not all the way up to that 154, which would be your UT1, all right, then you are not working hard enough to get that next level of training benefit, all right? You're not gonna be inducing a UT1 training stimulus, but you are going to be creating more fatigue than you need to do to create a UT2 training stimulus. And if you keep doing that, what's gonna happen is you're gonna sacrifice the amount of volume overall that you're gonna be able to put into the bank at that UT2, and ultimately training volume is going to be one of the, probably in almost all instances, the most effective training stimulus. In some instances, frequency is the most effective training stimulus, but for most people, just volume over time, not necessarily volume on individual sessions, all right? Volume over time is going to be the most effective training stimulus. And if you're constantly training up here and you're constantly trying to push yourself up here because this is what you perceive as a successful UT2 session, then you're going to be accumulating a lot more fatigue, and then you're gonna reduce the amount of volume that you can achieve because it's gonna take you longer to recover between sessions, you're gonna be more tired. Then ultimately in the long term, your line you might kind of push, your scatter plot may have more dots up here, all right? But your overall progression is going to be a slower slope, a lower slope. Is probably gonna put you somewhere around there, all right? And so you're still gonna get faster, all right? But you're not gonna get as fast as you would have been had you make sure that you trained within that effective UT2 zone, all right? And so think about that as you're going in. You wanna maintain consistent feel, all right? You wanna understand what UT2 feels like, and you wanna consistently get to that point and accumulate volume at that point, all right? And we don't wanna kinda keep pushing there. And you wanna be able to feel successful on these days where you're hitting 2-3 seconds slower than what your average is, as you are on the days that you're hitting those 2-3 seconds faster than what you normally see, all right? And so that's it for part 1 of this talk. And so in part 2, I'll make another video where I talk just about how to approach your individual sessions and how to kind of pace yourself for UT2 and how to approach it and how to think about UT2 to ensure that you have the flexibility on any given session to fall within this range, all right? That you can trust your instincts and your instincts will guide you to the appropriate place, that you don't want to go into any given steady state saying, this is my target for today and that's what I'm gonna hit, all right? You can set up your UT2 in a way that gives you basically the ability to call an audible on any given session and to trust and to react to how you're feeling on that day and ensure that your training session is dialed in to that feeling so that you get the most out of it and you get the best representation of your fitness on any given day. That's it. Thanks for listening, guys. I hope this helped. Definitely tune in for that part 2, which I'll try to get out within the next week. Subscribe to the channel for sure if you aren't subscribed already. I'm actually close to 1,000 people, and once I get to 1,000 people, I'll actually offer like a special Q&A. I'll do like maybe we'll schedule like a live Q&A. People can hop on, ask questions about their training or about training in general, and I'll be happy to do that kind of as a little celebration to getting to that benchmark. But in the meantime, thank you to everybody that supported the channel to this point. I really appreciate it, and definitely always appreciate the comments. Throw them down below if you have them, and otherwise share this with other people that you think would benefit from it, and we'll catch you on that next video. Bye.